Good afternoon and welcome to the News Roundup for Tuesday, October 7, 2025. I'm Bill Thomas, and here's what's happening right now. Hit the road, Jack. A new Senate report warning that over the next decade, AI could replace a staggering number of U.S. jobs. An epic gift for President Trump. A candidate for New York City mayor claiming that a win next month by socialist Zoran Mamdani could ultimately lead to a federal takeover of the Big Apple. And yeah, time's up. The Pentagon urgently zeroing in on the Navy's next generation stealth fighter with the threat of communist China looming large on the horizon. Also, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene breaking ranks with the GOP over health care. And we'll tell you about a special town in Nebraska where one older woman, she runs the entire show simply because she's the only person who lives there. Yeah, all this and much more coming up right now on the Big Roundup. We have so much to get to today, and we begin with a dire warning about the astonishing loss of American jobs, which could be on the way very shortly due to the rapidly growing use of artificial intelligence. A new Senate report claiming that over the next 10 years, AI could wind up eliminating nearly 100 million jobs here in the U.S. alone, wreaking havoc with our country's entire labor market and spurring calls by Democrats for a special tax to compensate for those losses. According to the report, more than a dozen major workforce categories likely to see over half of their jobs replaced by AI or robotic systems over the next decade. Those hard-hit sectors include customer service, movers, secretaries, and the worst of all, the fast food industry, where just about 90% of the current workforce is likely to lose their job. So, the report was drummed up by Bernie Sanders and his fellow Democrats. And as a result, they're now proposing that companies pay a substantial robot tax for every job where a person is replaced by a machine, arguing those funds will be needed to help replace lost payroll taxes, while simultaneously supporting programs to retrain the workers who ultimately lose their gigs. The Senate report also recommends a number of other protections for workers who are threatened by AI, including a 32-hour work week, a $17 per hour federal minimum wage, and even equity stakes in automated industries for the people who work there. Now, the report goes on to conclude that the eventual impact of AI is not yet set in stone, saying that how we ultimately decide to regulate automation will likely determine the future for all of us. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. There's a major paradigm shift coming to the workplace. Everyone's going to be impacted. Yeah, jobs might be eliminated. And thankfully, the Democrats, led by their grand poobah, Bernie Sanders, you know that guy, they're here to save the day with their revolutionary fix. And check this out. They want to track down the companies which upgrade, modify, and streamline their operations, watch those groups pour billions of dollars back into the economy, and then penalize them. It's a Democratic motto. If you make it, we'll tax it. It's no big secret that AI, robots, and automation and all the rest, they're kind of the wave of the future. And as the new technology takes hold, some jobs, they'll no longer be necessary. However, and this is where superhero Sanders misses the point and ends up doing what he does best. He vilifies, tears down, and attacks all those who are making substantial contributions to our country. It's all pretty basic. If minimum wage jobs in the fast food sector, as an example, if those are lost, here's what happens. To begin with, for the first time in your life, your order is actually going to be correct. No tomato and extra ketchup and all that. Second, if fast food joints begin using AI, robots, and automation, they'll have to hire someone to build out, maintain, and repair that infrastructure. And that all goes for affected industries, all the affected industries. In other words, when one job vanishes, tons of additional jobs, they're going to be created, better paying high-tech jobs with benefits and a very bright future. Your thoughts and comments on the new world being created right before our very eyes. Drop us a note now, and we're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. And we lean on that guy right over there, the email postmaster, Diamond Davy Ross, to tell us who's up first. Afternoon, Davy.
Hey, Bill. How you doing today?
Outstanding, sir. Who do we got?
Great. We've got Clyde from South Central L.A., Bill.
Hello, Clyde. By the way, they did away with South Central L.A. for some reason years ago. Now it's just called South L.A. Not much of a difference, but locals there call it South L.A. Clyde, you should have known that when you wrote in, but I'll cut you some slack. And what's on your mind?
Well, Clyde says, listen up, folks. The robot revolution is upon us, and AI is an existential threat to humanity.
Well, I wouldn't call it a threat, but listen, if we want to follow Bernie's lead, maybe we ought to bring back the horse and the buggy and tell all those evil entrepreneurs who make motor cars to cease and desist immediately. Yeah, progress, it's bad, it's evil, and if you try to create anything, we'll tax you to death. There's a big difference right now between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans, we want to incentivize growth. We want to incentivize people who think big and grand and have big ideas. Democrats, on the other hand, they just want to penalize for trying to make the world a little bit better. It's a big difference. Appreciate you checking in. And Davey, who's up next?
Bill, we have a different point of view here coming in from Myron, who's writing to us today from Evanston, Illinois.
Afternoon, Myron. What are you thinking?
He says this AI nonsense is just another excuse for Democrats to raise taxes.
Yeah.
People are always afraid of change, and they said the same thing about cars, computers, and the internet.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders and all his fellow Democrats, all they're trying to do is stop progress, essentially. And they're putting the threat right up in front of everybody. If you build something new, if you change something up, we're just going to tax you to death. We don't want any changes. However, we do want some changes, so we're going to change things up just a bit now, turn our attention to the Big Apple, where right now the gloves are coming off. Yeah, the insults are flying, and the battle to become New York City's next mayor is shifting into high gear. Check it out. Disgraced former governor Andrew Cuomo now warning anyone who'll listen that if his opponent, Zoran Mamdani, wins in the upcoming election, it'll be just like handing President Trump a lovely gift on a silver platter. Cuomo claims that if Mamdani eventually becomes mayor, Trump will use the Democrats' victory to point out the dangers of electing a far-left politician and then ultimately use it as an excuse for a federal takeover of the entire city. On the other hand, Cuomo brags that he himself is the last person Trump wants to see in the mayor's mansion, saying that when he was the governor of New York during the president's first term, the two men went toe-to-toe on a bunch of issues at hand, and they fought on a daily basis. It was kind of a political MMA fight. They're always going back and forth. I remember those days. Cuomo also says right now the New York mayoral race basically boils down to a Democratic socialist in Mamdani and himself, who's a true Democrat. However, he seems to be intentionally discounting a Republican candidate, a guy I'm a very big fan of, called Curtis Sliwa. He'd make a fine mayor. For his part now, Mamdani says that today the president and his billionaire donors are making no bones about the fact that ever since current mayor Eric Adams dropped out of the race, Cuomo is their preferred choice to be the city's next head honcho. Final thought, this is the News Roundup Lowdown, the way we see it all panning out. The once upon a time honorable Andrew Cuomo makes a good point, and it's a point that a number of other prominent individuals have already alluded to. However, every now and again, New York or any big metropolis, they need a Mamdani kind of guy to remind them just how terrible it is to have an extremist left-wing politician running the big show, the big circus. You know, with this Zoran fella, you'll get free bus rides, although not really because somebody has to pay. Rent freezes, great for the tenant, tragic for the landlord, and free government child care. Now, I'll give him a pass on that one on account of city government should raise children, not families. Or maybe I got that one wrong. I may have to rethink that one just a little bit more. Cuomo running as an independent might be your cup of tea, but if he performs so poorly as the governor of New York that he was actually forced to resign, would you really want to rehire him for yet another government job and a lower level government job? The vote has to go to Republican Curtis Sliwa. This guy is New York. He's got none of the nonsense or baggage associated with the other two knuckleheads. He'll bring safety and prosperity back to the city, and he will work effectively with the Trump administration. Now, who gets your vote for mayor of New York City? Even if you're not a resident of New York City, today your vote counts. Cast your vote right now via email. We're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. Davey, let's go to the email voting bag, and who's up first?
Okay, Bell, here's one from Barry in Patterson, New Jersey.
Talk to us, Barry.
He says, how can these guys, Cuomo and Mamdani, even be in the race? It's Guardian Angel Sliwa all the way. Make America safe again.
Yeah, make America safe indeed. And to the degree that Curtis Sliwa does not win that race and somebody else does, we'll still make America safe again because Donald Trump, in time, the more complicated New York becomes, he'll send the troops, he'll send the National Guard right into New York City and clean things up real quickly. Let's see how this one all pans out. Very good. Who's up next?
Okay, Bill, here's somebody who's got your back. It's Cynthia in Quincy, Massachusetts.
Cynthia, I like you already. You got my back. What do you say?
She says, no matter who wins, New York City is still a mess, and President Trump should send in the National Guard as soon as the results are in.
Yeah, as soon as entirely possible. Mamdani, this guy, if you don't know about him, he is a radical socialist Democrat. Cuomo, not to be trusted. And this Curtis Sliwa fella, that's what the city absolutely needs. He wins this election, Donald Trump won't need to send the National Guard in because Sliwa will clean up the streets on his own. Now, if you don't know, he is the founder and the CEO of the Guardian Angels, a nonprofit crime prevention organization. He knows what it takes to make New York safe and prosperous once again. All right, switch things up just a bit. Turn our focus to some pressing news concerning national security, the looming threat of our country's foremost foreign adversary, and a pivotal high-stakes choice which is rapidly approaching for our Secretary of War. At any moment now, the Pentagon's set to choose the defense contractor who will be handpicked to design and build our Navy's next-generation stealth fighter. Meanwhile, at stake is our country's ability to defend itself from the growing threat of China. The new jets, they're going to be stationed on America's aircraft carriers all across the globe, and they'll be replacing our nation's outdated Super Hornet fleet, which has been flying around since the 1990s. Time to upgrade. Right now, both Boeing and Northrop Grumman are neck and neck for the lucrative contract, and though the size of the order remains classified, officials point out that the deal, ultimately, it's going to be worth billions and billions of dollars. They'll say that postponing the decision could drastically affect our country's ability to deal with China, warning that any further delays could ultimately leave our Navy without a modern fighter and therefore severely undermine our entire fleet's ability to project power worldwide. So, the new state-of-the-art aircraft is called the FAXX, and it's expected to have a number of advanced features, including greater stealth capabilities, longer range, and the ability to work in tandem with the rest of the Navy's modernized systems. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Man, you got to stay competitive in this world. Some of the new toys coming to the U.S. Navy, and as fancy as the last batch of fighters jets were, the new batch going to be even more impressive. And oddly, these new aircraft are not being sold as machines intended to go head-to-head with Russia. Rather, they're being marketed as a prime defense against China. Now, the world is changing. Secretary Hegseth knows what's what, and he's clearly planning ahead. So, the FAXX will be built by either Boeing or Northrop Grumman, and for now, the contract's still up for grabs. By the way, Producer Dave, you might not know this, Toyota, they don't build fighter jets, but even if they did, they've had far too many recalls lately, which we're going to brief you on in just a couple of minutes, another one of their recalls. They won't be getting the contract, which will most likely be worth billions and billions of greenbacks. Come on, Toyota, you got to get it together. Now, something to mull over. President Trump is always talking about having the strongest and most advanced military in the world. So at this point, are we planning ahead right now, or are we trying to catch up with China? Who really knows? Hey, drop us a note with your thoughts or your comments, suggestions as well, and you'll catch us at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. Davey, to the email bag. Who we turning to for some wisdom on this one?
Okay, Bill, here's one from Alberto in San Jose, California.
Bring it on, Big Al.
He says, every day China is preparing for war and getting ready to take over Taiwan, while we can't even make up our minds about which jet to buy. Doesn't bode well for the future.
Yeah, on top of all that, China is having some high-level meetings coming up, I believe, in the next week or two with North Korea. China, North Korea, and Russia, they're all in cahoots, so we better start spending and spending big to not only remain competitive, but to have the advantage over the competition. Donald Trump is on the White House. The White House is on the right path moving forward, as is the Secretary of War. And who's up next?
Okay, Bill, here's one from Ted in Boise, Idaho.
Hiya, Ted.
Ted says there's a reason we have the strongest military in the world. Let the free market do its thing, and in the end, we'll always come out on top.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, billions and billions of our tax dollars are going to be spent on this program. More money is already being spent developing and building other aircraft as well, trying to advance our military industrial complex. It's kind of like nuclear bombs, though. How many bombs do you really need, and how many aircraft do you really need? I hope we're not overspending, but apparently the White House knows more than your News Roundup host. All right, a couple of additional headlines we are keeping a very close watch on here in the News Roundup newsroom. To begin with, in Washington, the shutdown of the federal government now roaring past the 1 week mark, no end in sight. Both parties refusing to budge an inch, and efforts to end the impasse are going absolutely nowhere. Meanwhile, a growing number of federally funded institutions are shutting their doors, and a whole bunch of air traffic control towers now facing extreme traffic shortages, including one airport right here in my hometown, Southern California, forced to recently operate for hours with nobody in the tower. No air traffic controllers. How dangerous is that? All right, moving along now to some surprising news from Capitol Hill. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia breaking with her fellow Republicans and joining Democrats in their call for the extension of Obamacare health subsidies. Says that even though she's not a fan of the program, ending those benefits will cause insurance premiums to skyrocket for a whole bunch of hard-working Americans. And now a couple of things to brief you on regarding former President Joe Biden. Joe, back in the news. In a stunning rebuke, Democratic officials saying that money, which normally would have been set aside for Biden's presidential library, will instead now be used to support the party's candidates in the upcoming 2026 midterm election. Additionally, the CIA now revealing that in 2015, while he was vice president, Biden leaned heavily on the agency to squash an intelligence report linking his family's alleged ties to corrupt business dealings in Ukraine. I remember those days very well. And turning now to the always intriguing world of business with a quick glance at a couple of stories currently making waves in finance, also in commerce, and more. Toyota, we just talked about them a moment ago, recalling nearly 400,000 vehicles here in the U.S. due to a significant problem with their rear view cameras. Now, the automaker saying that a software issue in some of their Tundra trucks and Sequoia SUVs could cause those cameras to malfunction, reducing their ability to see behind them and posting a potential risk to their safety. And David, what do those Sequoias and those trucks cost? What's an average price?
I don't know, Bill. They're pretty expensive. I'd say 40, 50 grand.
Now, I would too, that or maybe more, and you got a problem with the camera. So I say buy one of those used cheap iPhones. You take the iPhone and some masking tape or electrical tape and tape the phone onto the back of the ride. There's your new backup camera. Easy, quick fix. And those cameras, as you know, pretty good images, right?
A great idea, Bill.
That's a great idea. All right, moving along now to some very encouraging news for fans of a popular commodity. Yeah, the price of gold shattering an all-time high, hitting more than $4,000 an ounce as investors increasingly turn to the precious metal as a safe haven, all from the economic turmoil, which is rattling the entire planet. Everyone goes to gold. Now, this is a real kick in the pants. The old pharmacy giant Rite Aid now pulling the plug on all of their operations and shutting down each of their remaining locations. The company, which was once our country's largest drugstore chain, finally going belly up for the last time after all their bankruptcy files ultimately led to nowhere. And didn't Rite Aid at one time, Davey, take over all the thrifty stores? Is that how that panned out?
They did indeed, Bill. They had, if you wanted thrifty ice cream, you went to Rite Aid.
You went to Rite Aid. So no more thrifty ice cream at the Rite Aid stores, but to my understanding, thrifty ice cream is still available somewhere, maybe at other pharmacies or maybe in the ice cream section at your local grocery store. Love the thrifty ice cream. And now time for a quick look at the lighter side of news, and here is what's cooking. Kicking things off today with the true definition of a one-man band. Only in this case, it's a one-woman band. A town in northeastern Nebraska called Mamdani, a population of just one who keeps the entire operation up and running. And believe it or not, it's an amazing 87-year-old young gal named Elsie who's been holding down the fort all by her lonesome and for a long time. Even though no one else lives there, the town has a mayor, a treasurer, and a clerk, and they're all Elsie, who's been running the show ever since her husband passed away approximately 20 or so years ago. She's also in charge of the public library and the local tavern where she flips burgers, fries eggs, and serves drinks from the crack of dawn till well after dark, charging her customers the same low prices year after year. If you're only vaguely familiar with Mamdani, Nebraska, just off of Highway 12 near the Missouri River and pretty darn close to the Nebraska-South Dakota border. You know, they don't have a Walmart, an Amazon hub, or a McDonald's, but they got something better. You know what they got, Davey?
Bill, what do they have?
They've got Elsie Eiler. She is quite the catch. Yeah, she's the barkeep, librarian, a better mayor than that charlatan from New York, Zoran Mamdani would ever be, and she keeps the entire metropolis of Mamdani thriving. She runs the diner, too. The burgers can't be beat, and with a population of just one, hardly ever a morning rush hour traffic jam. Producer Davey, you can have Maui, Mexico, or Detroit, one of your favorite vacation spots. Next time I go off on holiday, I'm running on down to Mamdani, as in Nebraska. On the other hand, maybe I'll journey over to Las Vegas and buy my very own cheap motel, bet on red, and maybe hit the jackpot. Yeah, a little chunk of Vegas now up for grabs, and here's what we just found out. An iconic motel on the Las Vegas Strip hitting the auction block at a bargain basement price as plummeting tourism leaves struggling Sin City on life support. Yeah, they're flatlining and grasping and gasping for air. The legendary Diamond Inn Motel, one of the oldest buildings left standing on the entire Strip. However, the $29.50 per night dive threw in the towel a couple of years back, now up for sale once again with a cut rate opening bid of just 10 million clams. What's the conversion rate? Is that the same as 10 million Somalis, Davey?
That's 10 million Somalis, 10 million greenbacks, however you dice it or slice it, Bill.
10 million clams. Very good. According to the listing, the 48-room property sits on a prime chunk of real estate just a few short steps away from the world-famous Welcome to Fabulous Las Vegas sign. This once-in-a-lifetime opportunity also comes with its very own mascot, a large sculpture of a pink elephant. Looks kind of purple, but they're saying it's a pink elephant, which the owners say came from the Disney company way back in the 1950s. Sounds kind of enticing. Your very own blue and white motel, complete with a massive pink elephant in the front yard. Lovely. And all in the heart of Las Vegas, Nevada. What could possibly go wrong? The $10 million asking price sounds kind of reasonable. Another $4 or $5 million to upgrade the one-star sleepery, and all just in time for the recent announcement that tourism in Vegas, it's down, and down dramatically. No one's going to Vegas. You know, it'd be kind of like buying a beat-up 8-track stereo manufactured in 1978 by Radio Shack or Sears. $189 might sound like a good buy, but I hear tell, I don't know one way or the other, Davey. I'm not a high-tech guy, but I hear tell that 8-track stereos are somewhat out of style now, and apparently there's some fancy new technology taking over. Have you heard anything?
Bill, you can't replace that wonderful analog sound.
I love the analogs. I love the old 8-track tapes. You can have the cassettes. I want my 8-tracks. You want the motel? You can have it. I'll take my $10 million and buy a one-bedroom fixer-upper condo in a rough neighborhood right here in my hometown, L.A. Hey, thoughts or comments on fancy motels or one-horse towns in Nebraska? Talk to us via email. We're at newsroundup@gmail.com. Davey, who's talking to us now?
Okay, Bill, we got people checking in with us. It's Betty from Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Delighted to hear from you, Betty. What are you thinking?
She says that woman, Elsie, is truly amazing.
Yeah.
If I ever find myself in the neighborhood, I'm definitely going to pay her a visit.
And I might go with you, and we all might take Elsie out dancing for the night. I like a woman who takes charge and runs the entire town. I'd like my very own town as well. Very good. Thank you for checking in. And who's up next?
Okay, Bill, here's one from Lou in Indianapolis.
What you got, Lou?
Lou says Vegas is going down the tubes. Why would anyone drop their hard-earned dough on a rundown motel?
Yeah. Vegas is, it's odd. This is the first time in the history of ever knowing about Las Vegas where I've heard tourism is down. I've been to Reno. Reno is kind of like a smaller, more petite version of Las Vegas. Very nice, very comfortable, very family-oriented. I'd take Reno over Las Vegas, and it's not that far away. Reno is the vacation spot. Plus, they've got that beautiful Lake Tahoe, unbeatable. What has Vegas got? All right, one more, David. Got to wrap it up.
Okay, Bill, here's one from Red in Denver, Colorado.
Hiya, Red.
And he says, I'd much rather grab a burger from Elsie's Diner than pay ridiculous prices for an overpriced meal in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and Elsie's Diner, from what I hear, I think soft drinks are $1 or $1.25. She's got the burgers for $2.50, the fried eggs as well at a reasonable price. Just amazing that somebody 87 years old is running the entire town. Only one person in town is her, but she does indicate there are people that are traveling through her town. So there's some people, there's some customers coming into the diner, some customers using the library and the post office. She's not all alone, but boy, if you like some peace and quiet, that is the place to be. At night, they roll up the sidewalks. Now, time for us to call it a wrap on the Tantalizing Tuesday edition of the Big News Roundup. And before we go, as we do each and every day here on the program, we share with you a very notable quote. And these encouraging words, they come to us today from Ricardo Montalban. Is it Montalban or Montalban, Davey?
I believe it's Montalban.
Ricardo Montalban, who said, if you shake your fist, the other guy will shake his too. But if you extend your hand to shake their hand, then they will extend theirs as well. And you made a friend. I like this guy. Ricardo was a popular Mexican and American actor whose career spanned nearly 7 decades. Perhaps best known for his role as the villainous Khan in the original Star Trek, as well as for playing Mr. Rourke in the classic TV series Fantasy Island. But Davey, you left out the most important part about this Ricardo guy.
What did I leave out, Bill?
You left out the Ricky Ricardo Orchestra. Don't you remember Babalu, Cuban Pete, and all the rest?
Bill, we're talking about Ricardo Montalban. Ricardo Montalban, the actor. Not Ricky Ricardo. Ricardo Montalban.
A different Ricardo altogether. Honest mistake. All right, now it is time for us to bust out. But before we do, don't forget the News Roundup motto. Ask not what your podcast can do for you. Ask what you can do for your podcast. For example, simply subscribe to the program so you never miss even a single episode. And now it looks like our time is officially up, so have an awesome day today. Please stay safe. Let's all continue to watch out for one another. And with that, Engineer Jamie, I'll implore upon you to please dim the lights. Let's gently fade to black, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow afternoon. And David, you're sure those are two different people, Ricardo Montalban and Ricky Ricardo?
Totally separate and different people, Bill.
I had no idea.
Night and day.